Morning, guys. I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So we got a nice intimate group here. Feel free to jump in with any questions you've got. I like to have a back and forth if I can. So if you're interested in the topic, I'll do what I can to try to explain as I go. So my session is talking about health, wellness, and tile. And the reason I was asked to present is because I'm Dan Marvin. I'm Director of Technical Services for MAPEI, but I'm also on the Tile Council of North America's Green Initiative Committee, which does a lot of work with trying to communicate the health and wellness benefits of ceramic tile. So along with several of the TCNA staff, we've been doing these Quickfire sessions to try to highlight just kind of quick bursts of information about particular attributes of ceramic tile that are worth repeating, and we're really trying to get folks that are attending this conference to go out and then be able to talk with people they know and spread the word that tile is a healthy choice. Most people know somebody that's pulled up all their carpet and put tile in their house because it's hypoallergenic, and or maybe they have pets or something like that. So that's usually the starting point when people think health and wellness and tile. Is they know somebody that used tile because it's doesn't have any little nooks and crannies for stuff to hide, and it's pretty easy to clean. But there's a little more to it too, and I'll just go through a few of the points. I really kind of start out at the beginning. My previous career, I was a ceramic engineer for Dow Tile, American Oleum Tile, Florida Tile. So I've worked at a lot of tile plants. If any of you been to a tile plant, have you gotten to do a tour of any of the tile factories? It's really kind of neat. If you get a chance, it's really it's interesting, because I think a lot of people have in the back of their mind that making ceramics is kind of an artsy, little kill in the cellar kind of setup, and most of these factories are just miles and miles of kills cranking out tile 24/7. So it's really come a long way. Even in the 25 years that I was in the industry, it went from just kind of a piecework setup to really full production all the time, just cranking out tile one after another. The nice thing there is it's gotten a lot more efficient to make tile. So that is one of the kind of sustainability benefits of ceramic tile. But I'm going to start with the ingredients because it's important to know where the products you're using are coming from. Like most ceramics, tile starts out with what they call it's a porcelain body. So it's clay, feldspar, and sand. The first one I'm going to talk about is clay. Clay is widely available. There's a stretch of Kentucky and Tennessee and down into Texas that has lots and lots of clay deposits. And that's why you tend to see all the tile factories are clustered in kind of that little corridor, because that's where the raw materials are the most abundant. Nice thing there is you're digging up the raw materials in the morning, putting them on a dump truck, and they're showing up at the plant that afternoon and discharging. So it's not a huge long supply chain going halfway across the world. It's usually within 50 to 100 miles of the factory. You're digging up that clay and being able to use it. The next ingredient is feldspar, where clay kind of holds everything together before it gets fired. Feldspar is the part of the body that melts and turns into tile. So it melts and fills in all those little pores, and I like to call it a dirty glass. It's a very glassy kind of product that when you heat it up, it melts and it turns the tile into tile. So feldspar is what's actually doing the heavy lifting when you're talking about porcelain or things that have low porosity. It's because they've got a lot of feldspar in it that's melted down and formed that nice glassy matrix. And then sand. Sand is silica and dioxide silica, and it's basically just like the sand you find on the beach or at the golf course. Usually that's the same kind of sand that's brought in. It's an inexpensive filler, and it also becomes part of the body when the feldspar melts. So those are the three basic ingredients that goes into all the tiles you see out here on the show floor. They all start in kind of that same basic way. The reason I wanted to point that out is because those are just kind of rocks and dirt. I mean, there's not a lot in tile that's really gonna hurt you. If some of this spills on the ground, you've got a pile of rocks or dirt on the ground. You don't have a petroleum spill. So the nice thing about the materials that go into tiles are pretty inert to begin with. Here in the U.S., even though this is coming out of quarries, and quarries sometimes get a bad rap, In the US, there's very strict rules that the quarry owners have to turn that land back into useful land when they're done taking the materials out of it. So you end up with pastures and lakes, and usually they're put back into a fairly pristine condition when the mining activity is done. And a lot of the other competing flooring products out there, that's not necessarily the case. You get into conversations about fracking and some of the petroleum extraction, or even some other materials where they leave behind heavy metal contaminants and things in the earth. That's not the case with tile. It comes out of the ground and it goes back to nature. The interesting part, if you do go through a tour of a factory, is you get to see all that combined together into a tile. I'm going to wave my arms a lot because I don't have a ton of pictures on what's going on here. What you see here is the kill, and this thing is half a mile long in some cases. They're very long, but they're very quick. So you're going from one end of the kill to the other in a little over an hour. So it's getting up to 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it's getting back down to temperature, and that doesn't take a whole lot of time at all. So what you're... Every single what? So each one of these boxes, these are the burners, and each one of these is what they call a zone. So this zone may be set at 1,600 degrees, and this zone may be set at 1,800 degrees. And these are all rollers. So the tile's actually going through here on a roller. So you've got a whole wide, probably 20 tiles wide curtain of tile that's going through this kiln all at the same time. And it's going, as it goes through each of these zones, it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And then on the other end, it's getting cooler and cooler and cooler. So this is what they call a roller hearth kiln. That's the technology that's been widely adopted for making lots of tiles. If you get a tile that's warped, usually what's happened is somewhere in here, it's either stopped or it's bumped up against another tile and it's done one of these. So a lot of the things that can possibly go wrong with tile is happening when you're making it. So a lot of control goes into this. This is all computerized too. So you've got a big bank of computers. These are all thermocouples, so it knows what the temperature is and it controls accordingly. Probably the important takeaway here is to remember that by going up to 2,400 degrees, anything that's bad in that tile is already gone. So there's no organics, there's not even any moisture. The tile is done everything it's going to do, and it comes out the other end pretty much as an inert ceramic rock. You've turned it from rock back into rock. Some of the other floorings out there do have some environmental issues with the raw materials that go into them. For sure, vinyl and carpet start as petroleum, so you've got all the baggage that comes along with being a petroleum-based product. Hardwood floors, these tend to, especially the exotic, like the Brazilian cherry, those are Brazilian cherry forests that they're cutting down to turn into your floors. So there's a little bit of a bad message there too about cutting down the forest, especially old growth rainforests, and turning them into flooring. They tap dance around that, but if you see those exotic wood species, that's what you're buying. You're buying old forests that have been around for thousands of years. Microplastic fibers. If you celebrated Earth Day this year, that was their big theme, is there's too much plastic, especially in our oceans. It's getting into the food supply. Those microplastics can show up in floorings other than tile. Formaldehyde, if you watch 60 Minutes, or maybe you heard about some issues that the wood industry was having with their engineered hardwood, where some of the fillers and some of the resins that they use to make those products emit formaldehyde into the air when they're in your house. So people were getting very high formaldehyde readings and they were getting sick. So there are some definite knocks on some of the engineered hardwoods that are out there because of formaldehyde. And then volatile organics in general. So formaldehyde is one kind, but there's other organics that can come off of flooring that are called volatile organics. That new car smell that you get in your car, unfortunately, that's all volatile organics that are coming off of the materials that are in your car. Same in your house. They can come off of your vinyl flooring or out of your carpet or out of your hardwood. Phthalates are another one. Vinyl uses phthalates to make them soft. Phthalates they're the things why water bottles have changed in recent years, because there were phthalates in the plastic of the water bottles that were leaching into the water and you were drinking it. So there's a lot of chemistry that goes into some of those other products that tile doesn't have that issue. Installation products, that's my side of it now. I work for an installation products company. We do a lot of work on trying to make sure our installation products are just as inert as the tile that we're setting with them. Most of them are cement-based, so if you've got a mortar and a grout, typically that starts life as Portland cement or a calcium aluminate cement. Then we'd say add some things like cellulose and some other fairly inert products to it, even silica sand. So all those things that are in the installation products, once you apply them, mix them up, apply them, and they cure, no more VOCs, there's nothing coming off. It goes along really well with the tile. Just in the sake of transparency, the one knock that can be had on installing tile is that it can emit silica, respirable crystalline silica into the air if you're cutting it. And the big deal here is dry cutting. So if you're using an angle grinder to cut tile, you really probably ought to get away from that practice because it has been shown that you're breathing in more silica dust than is probably healthy for you. If there's a cloud of anything on your job site, you want to be aware of what's in that cloud and make sure that you're taking some steps to make sure you're protecting your health. This one isn't a big deal if you're wet cutting or if you're scoring snapping, you're not exposed to a significant amount of respirable crystalline silica. And the tile industry commissioned a big study to make sure that was the case. So because there were other industries out there saying, oh, you've got silica issues, the tile industry said, well, we don't really have silica issues if people are doing best practices when it comes to mixing and cutting. So they commissioned an engineering report. The engineering commission went in and looked at cutting, both dry cutting, wet cutting, and score and snap to see if silica was coming off, to see what heavy metals were coming off. And they didn't find much as long as they were wet cutting or score and snapping. The only issue they had was when there was dry cutting. So taking this information a step further, a lot of the tile manufacturers are going to start recommending wet cutting only or score and snap cutting only for their tiles because of this engineering report. It's just one way that the tile industry has sort of tried to stay ahead of the curve on what's in our products. If you sat through Bill's excellent presentation, which I think you're a new audience, so I can repeat a little bit what he said. He was talking about our environmental product declaration, the EPDs. EPDs are designed as a transparency document where you can look at the EPD and see what are the possible harmful effects of a product on the environment. So in the case of tile, the EPD showed that we have a very low threshold of harmful effects in the environment, and the Tile Council North America has this for free on their website. If you do want, or if you're interested in any of these links, they are available on the app. You can go into the app and pull up the session, and you can actually download the slides and also get the link. So anything I'm showing you here, you've got access to if you're interested, and this is available for free. Because tile's not installed in a vacuum, there's also EPDs for mortars and grouts. Those EPDs are useful if you're really, I won't say they're interesting, scintillating reading, but they're interesting from a scientific standpoint because you can look at them and say that the impact on the environment is fairly negligible in most of these categories when you're using tile. There's also a program the tile industry has put together called Green Squared. Maybe you've heard of it, hopefully you've heard of it. Green Squared is a certification for tiles and also installation products. Green Squared takes a look at the whole process from extraction. We were talking a little bit about extracting in the quarries, getting the clay and the feldspar and the silica. So it starts there and it moves all the way through the firing process, all the way to where it shows up at your job site. So it takes a look at things like packaging and shipping. All of that gets lumped together into this document. So to get Green Squared certified, you have somebody show up at your factory and say, are you doing what you say you're doing? Is what you're doing sustainable? And that's the only way you can get the certification. Even if you haven't heard of Green Squared, it is starting to show up in some pretty impressive places. USGBC's LEED program, this building is LEED Silver certified. The government, the GSA, is starting to require Green Squared certified products for their sustainable projects. So you're starting to see this show up more and more as people are having that sustainability discussion around building products, tile, and installation products. So what's that all mean? What's the takeaway? What do I want you to go out and tell your friends? The important thing is to keep in mind that tile is one of the healthiest choices for flooring that exists. It's been around for thousands of years. It's if you're putting it in your home, it's going to be around for as long as you want it. It's a sustainable choice because you don't have to replace it every 10 or 20 years like some other flooring products. The most important takeaway, though, is it's not adding anything into your air that you shouldn't breathe. It's not adding anything in your environment that you don't want there. It's really a very inert product. And that's some of the discussion that we've been trying to have as an industry. I think everybody kind of knows it intellectually, but now we've got a lot of the documentation in place to prove it. And so we're trying to be very proactive in getting out there and getting our message to the public. So take what I've given you and go out and tell the world that tile really is the sustainable choice. I very much appreciate your time, and thanks for stopping by.